Tokyo, Japan. April 1972. The Budokan on a championship night carries a specific quality of silence between the noise, the silence of people who understand what they are watching and are sitting with it, rather than performing their reaction to it. 6,000 people in seats that have witnessed serious martial arts for decades, the walls of the building holding the accumulated weight of every exchange that ever happened on this mat. Bruce Lee is in the front row. He is here because the Japan Karate Federation invited him as an honored guest for the All Japan Open Karate Championship, and because a contact at the Federation wanted him to experience high-level traditional karate competition before any of his upcoming projects touched on the discipline. He arrived in Tokyo 2 days earlier for film meetings, and the invitation fit the schedule. He has been here since the card started, watching, building a picture from what he observes. This is what he does at every competition he attends, regardless of the discipline, regardless of the level. He watches the way other people eat when they are hungry, completely and without performing the act. The man who won tonight's championship gave him the most to watch. His name is Watanabe Hiroshi, 31 years old, Shotokan karate since he was 9, 22 years of daily practice that produced a fighter the Japanese karate community discussed in the specific reverent way they discussed things that had stopped surprising them. His record coming into tonight was 59 wins, 1 loss, the loss in the 3rd year of his career, nothing since. The 58 consecutive wins built over 6 years of championship-level competition. His technique was the thing that serious practitioners in the audience had come to see. Not his power, though the power was real, the precision, the ability to place a technique exactly where it was designed to go, at exactly the speed it was designed to travel, with the specific economy of motion that 22 years built into a person's body, until the economy itself became the technique. Tonight's final lasted 3 minutes and 12 seconds. His opponent was the best karate competitor from Osaka, a man with his own significant record and his own significant following in the audience. Watanabe won it with a combination that the front rows could see clearly, and that the back rows could hear clearly, and that produced the kind of crowd response that competitions produce when something excellent has been witnessed by people equipped to recognize it. The Federation chairman took the microphone after the decision and spoke about the evening and the tradition it represented. Then he said something that the front section of the crowd knew was coming, because they had seen Bruce in the front row since the card started, and the section behind them learned about it from the sections in front of them in the specific chain of recognition that moves through crowds. He said Bruce Lee's name. 6,000 people in the Budokan made the sound of 6,000 people who have been given something they wanted. Bruce stood from the front row, received the championship trophy from the Federation official beside him, and walked to the competition mat. He stepped onto it and crossed toward the center where Watanabe was standing with his coaches and brought his hands together and bowed. The formal bow, complete, given fully and without anything held back. Watanabe looked at him. He did not bow back. He stood with his arms at his sides and his expression organized around something he had apparently decided before Bruce crossed the mat toward him. The people in the front rows could read the expression clearly. The Federation chairman, 2 steps away, could read it. The championship referee, still present from the final, could read it. 6,000 people went from their noise to a different kind of quiet. The chairman moved toward the mat center. A Federation official stood up at the scorer's table. Watanabe's head coach took a step. Watanabe took the announcement microphone before any of them reached him. He spoke in Japanese first, measured and direct, and then he said it again in English, because he had prepared this and wanted it understood without translation. He said, "I want to say something before this continues." He said, "I have trained every day for 22 years. I have entered competitions seriously for 15 years. I have won 58 consecutive matches at championship level. I have given this discipline everything I have, and the organization that claims to honor that has brought a Hollywood film actor to present my trophy." He looked at Bruce directly. "Your films are entertainment. I have seen them. The movement is impressive. But film technique and actual karate are different things. Film requires techniques that photograph well. Karate requires techniques that work against a real opponent who is genuinely trying to stop you. Those are different skill sets that produce different results." He said, "I have spent 22 years on the second kind. You have spent your career on the first kind. I will not accept this trophy from someone whose understanding of martial arts exists primarily in front of a camera." 6,000 people produce the sound of 6,000 people who have just heard something pointed and are processing it. Bruce stood on the mat, holding the trophy with the complete patience that was his most consistent quality, reading what was in front of him, finding the structure of it. Subscribe right now, because what Bruce says next is the sentence that makes everything that follows inevitable. He said, "May I respond?" The Federation chairman handed him the microphone with the expression of someone who has been managing events for a long time and has just encountered something his management training did not cover. Bruce said, clearly, to 6,000 people, "I started training when I was 13 years old. I studied Wing Chun under Ip Man. I have spent 19 years developing a martial arts system and teaching it to students across 2 countries who train in it seriously, every day, the way you train every day. What you see in my films is real technique. The camera shows it. It does not create it." He paused. He said, "I am a martial artist who has also made films. The order of those 2 things matters to me. It has always mattered to me." Watanabe said, "The order matters to you. The result is what it is. The result is that your public identity is a film actor, and this trophy represents something real, and I will not have it presented by someone whose relationship to real martial arts is primarily commercial." Bruce said, "Then demonstrate what real martial arts is. Right here. Whatever you believe I don't have, show me I don't have it." 6,000 people in the Budokan understood simultaneously what had just been offered, and the sound that understanding produced was immediate and enormous. Watanabe said, "You're serious." Bruce said, "You made a public claim about my training. I'm offering you the chance to verify it publicly. That seems reasonable." The Federation chairman was saying several things quickly in Japanese and English. 2 officials were on their feet. Watanabe's head coach had reached him and was speaking directly into his ear. Watanabe said something brief to his coach. His coach stopped speaking. Watanabe said to Bruce, "Karate rules. Standard competition scoring. The championship referee calls it." Bruce said, "Agreed." The Federation chairman looked at 6,000 people who were not going anywhere and made the decision that event organizers make when situations have moved past their control, which was to make it as safe as possible and then witness it. He told the championship referee to keep it clean and stop it immediately if it needed stopping. The referee acknowledged this and established terms for both fighters and the crowd. Exhibition format. Both fighters acknowledged the terms. The referee stepped back. They found their positions. Watanabe settled into his Shotokan stance. The stance of 22 years. Everything exactly where 22 years of daily practice had put it. His guard was the guard of a championship competitor, precise and grounded, and containing within it the specific threat of someone who had used it to win 58 consecutive matches. Bruce stood the way Bruce stood. The referee indicated they could begin. Watanabe opened with a front kick, the Shotokan Mae Geri, fast and technically exact, aimed at establishing range and reading the response. It was his standard competition opener, the technique he had used to set up his combinations in the final an hour earlier, thrown at the speed he threw it in competition. Bruce's body shifted. The kick passed through nothing. His right hand touched Watanabe's extending leg at the shin as it passed, light and specific. The referee called a point. 1 point. 2 seconds elapsed. 6,000 people made a sound. Watanabe recovered and came back with a reverse punch, his best scoring technique, thrown with the full hip rotation that 22 years had built into it. Bruce slipped it to his left, the minimum movement required, and from that position, his left hand found Watanabe's extended shoulder. Another touch. Another point. 2 points. 5 seconds elapsed. The Budokan had gone from its championship noise into the specific quality of attention that only happens when people are watching something they don't have a complete category for, and are building one in real time. Watanabe adapted. This was what championship competition produced, the ability to incorporate what each exchange showed you and change the approach. He came with a combination rather than a single technique, jab to cross to front kick, 3 connected elements, the combination he had used in the 3rd round of the final to score the decisive point. Like this video right now. The next 10 seconds are why this video has the title it has and why nobody who was in that building ever forgot what they witnessed. Bruce moved through the combination. Inside the jab, his body angling in a direction the jab's trajectory had not accounted for. The cross passed over his shoulder as he turned under it. The front kick he stepped inside of, getting into the space where it couldn't develop its designed force, and from that inside position, his right hand found Watanabe's chest. 1 contact. Placed. Held for a count. The referee called the 3rd point. 3 points. 8 seconds total elapsed. 6,000 people produced the sound of people who have just watched something happen faster than they were able to track it happening, the specific noise of understanding arriving after the fact rather than during it. The referee called the match. Watanabe stood in the position the last exchange had put him in. He was not hurt. Nothing had struck him with damaging force. He was standing with a touch on his chest as the most recent physical data point he had received, and he was processing it with the expression of someone whose existing model of how things work has just been given information it wasn't designed to accommodate. He had been touched 3 times in 8 seconds, 3 scoring points in 8 seconds. His own record for the fastest three-point sequence in competition was 14 seconds. Nobody else in the tournament tonight had done it in under 12. Bruce lowered his hand and stepped back to neutral. The Budokan erupted. All 6,000 of them, the specific eruption of people who have watched something extraordinary and are expressing it without caring how it looks. Watanabe looked at Bruce. Then he looked at the mat. Then he looked at Bruce again. He came again. Not under formal terms. The referee had called the match. This was Watanabe's decision, and it came from the place that such decisions come from, in serious competitors who have just been shown something publicly that they have not yet integrated. The combination of pride and training that doesn't have an off switch. He came with full commitment, the fastest and most powerful combination he had thrown all evening, everything 22 years had built, applied with the complete intention of a man who had won 58 consecutive matches and who had not yet fully received the information the last 8 seconds contained. Bruce moved inside the combination, and his hand found Watanabe's collar with a light redirection that used Watanabe's own forward momentum, and the mat received Watanabe. Hard enough that the sound reached the back sections. Hard enough that 6,000 people who had been making noise went quiet. Watanabe did not get up immediately. He lay on the mat, conscious, eyes open but not moving, not hurt badly, but hit with enough of his own momentum redirected that the body needed a moment to complete the accounting. Bruce stepped back. He looked at Watanabe on the mat. He looked at the referee and the officials who were converging on the mat. He crouched down, not standing over him, bringing himself to the same level, the way you approach someone when you want to convey something that is not victory. He extended his hand. The crowd, which had been building toward a roar, went quiet again at this gesture. The quiet of people watching something they didn't expect. The officials reached the mat. The championship referee was there. The medical staff who were standard presence at events like this were already moving toward the competition area. Watanabe's coaches were through the ropes. Watanabe looked at Bruce's extended hand. He looked at it for several seconds. His coaches reached him and one of them checked him and said something in Japanese. Watanabe acknowledged this, and his coaches helped him sit up and then helped him to his feet. He was steady, nothing damaged. The accounting was complete. He stood and looked at Bruce, who was still there, who had not moved away, who had stayed crouched, and then stood, as Watanabe stood, keeping himself at the same level, rather than standing over him. The crowd was watching this with complete attention. Bruce said, "Are you all right?" Watanabe looked at him. He said, in English, "Yes." Bruce picked up the championship trophy from where it had been set down at the edge of the competition area. He held it out to Watanabe. Watanabe looked at it. Bruce said, "This represents real work. 22 years of real work. Nothing that happened tonight changes that." Watanabe looked at the trophy, and then at Bruce, and then at 6,000 people watching. And then Watanabe came at him again. Subscribe if you're still here. What happens in the next 45 seconds is the most dramatic 45 seconds the Budokan has seen in years. He came not with competition technique, but with pure aggression, the specific aggression of someone who has been publicly shown something they weren't prepared to be shown, and whose body is expressing the experience before the mind has finished processing it. His coaches shouted. The referee was moving. 2 security staff who had been at the corners of the competition area were in motion. Watanabe was faster than all of them. Bruce moved sideways, and the attack passed through nothing, and Watanabe's momentum carried him past his intended target, and he turned immediately and came back, and Bruce moved again, and the pattern continued. Watanabe attacking with full commitment, Bruce creating space with the minimum required motion, and nothing connecting, and nobody in the building speaking. His head coach reached him, grabbed his arm, said something urgent and direct in Japanese. Watanabe stopped, not because of the grab, which he could have moved through, because something in what his coach said found the part of him that was still the serious practitioner underneath the reaction, the part that knew what was happening and what it meant. He stood in the competition area with his coach's hand on his arm, and his other coach moving to his other side, and the security staff forming a loose perimeter, and Bruce standing 8 feet away, still holding the championship trophy. The Budokan was silent. Watanabe looked at Bruce. He was breathing harder than he had been breathing after any of the championship matches tonight, not from exertion, from something else. Bruce crossed the 8 feet between them slowly. He held the trophy out again. He said, "Take it. You earned it before tonight. What happened tonight doesn't touch what you earned." Watanabe looked at the trophy. His coaches were beside him, and the officials were nearby, and 6,000 people were watching, and he was standing in the building where he had just won his 6th consecutive championship, and also just been shown something very specific and very public about the gap between what he thought he knew and what was actually true. He said, "What did you do?" Bruce said, "Which part?" Watanabe said, "All of it. 3 points in 8 seconds. I've been competing for 15 years. I have never been scored on 3 times in 8 seconds." Bruce said, "Your reverse punch telegraphs a quarter second early. Your right shoulder drops before your hand moves. It's consistent across every technique. I saw it in your final match tonight before any of this happened." Watanabe said, "You saw it before." Bruce said, "In the second round of your final, you threw the reverse punch twice in the same combination, and the shoulder drop was identical both times. I had it from that." Watanabe was quiet for a moment. He worked his right shoulder slightly, involuntarily, testing the description against his own internal memory of what he did. He said, 22 years. Bruce said, "The tell is built that deep. That's not a failure of training. It's a consequence of how deep the training went. The movement happens before conscious decision." Watanabe said, "Can it be fixed?" Bruce said, "Reduced. With specific work at the initiation, rather than at the technique itself. The shoulder is responding to the weight transfer that precedes it. You'd have to address the weight transfer to change the shoulder." Watanabe said, "How long?" Bruce said, "Months before it's meaningfully smaller, longer before it's reliable." Watanabe looked at the trophy that Bruce was still holding out toward him. He took it, he held it, and looked at it, and looked at the 6,000 people in the Budokan who were watching him, and he picked up the microphone from the referee who was holding it. He said in Japanese first and then in English, "I made a statement tonight that I made before I had the information to make it with. I said the man standing here does not have real martial arts. I was wrong. I am saying that in front of everyone here because I said the wrong thing in front of everyone here." 6,000 people responded. The response built from the sections closest to the mat outward and upward through the building, and what it contained was the specific warmth that comes when a crowd watches something difficult done without decoration. Bruce received this with the same expression he had worn throughout the evening. Not triumph, not performance. Just the settled, complete attention that was simply how he was. He picked up the Federation chairman's microphone and said, "To 6,000 people, Watanabe Hiroshi has trained this discipline for 22 years. The record he built is real. The technique I watched tonight is real. What happened on this mat between us is not a verdict on his training. It is 2 people finding out something true about each other. That is what this kind of exchange is for." The Budokan's response was the loudest of the evening. Backstage, in the corridor outside the competition area, Watanabe found Bruce before he left the building. Still in his gi, trophy under his arm, he said, "The weight transfer. Before the shoulder. Show me where it starts." Bruce showed him, standing in the corridor under fluorescent lights, specifically, and without holding anything back, walking him through the sequence from the earliest signal forward, explaining what was visible, and when, and what it communicated about what was coming. Watanabe asked 3 questions. Bruce answered all 3. Watanabe said, "Come to my dojo tomorrow, 6 in the morning." Bruce said, "I'll be there." She was already on the mat when he arrived at 6. So was Watanabe. They worked for 3 hours. Not a lesson with 1 teacher and 1 student. An exchange between 2 serious practitioners who had come from different directions toward the same questions and who spent 3 hours exploring where their answers overlapped and where they didn't. Both of them left with something they hadn't had before. That is the complete story. 8 seconds on the mat. 3 hours in the morning. The 8 seconds are what gets told, because 8 seconds makes a story. The 3 hours are what mattered, because 3 hours is where the exchange actually happened. Subscribe if this was worth your time. Tell me in the comments, what do you think Watanabe was thinking in the 6 seconds between Bruce extending his hand and him taking the trophy? I read every one.